Do you know how to motivate your prospect? How to open a sales call? How to prove a sales point? Would you like to have larger financial gain through higher production? Now, for the first time on record, Elmer Wheeler, the world's greatest salesman, takes you step by step through the secrets of successful selling. Whether you sell a product, service, or merely sell yourself to others, Elmer Wheeler's world-famous Wheeler Points will help you achieve your goal. Here to tell you about the 5 famous Wheeler Points and the revolutionary new 6th Wheeler Point is America's #1 salesman, Mr. Elmer Wheeler.
What makes people buy? Have you ever made a sale in a hurry and wished to gosh you knew the exact words you used in that customer over there or that prospect so you could use those same words and sell another one over here? What makes friends? Have you ever made a friend in a hurry and wished to gosh you knew the words you used on that friend over there so you could repeat those same words and have another friend? What makes people buy anyway? Well, I think it's the sizzle that makes people buy. It's always been the sizzle. Even back in the days of Rome, it was a sizzle the first Roman merchant used back there to sell his fancy togas to his men customers. He'd hold up a fancy toga, and his only selling sentence was, "It'll make you look like a senator." Back in those days, they didn't mind looking like senators. I was in the Sears Roebuck store the other day, and while I was in there, a farmer came in to look at some long red underwear. Now, of all the selling appeals in long red underwear, that was a mighty smart trained sizzler. The only thing he said was, "They won't itch." And brother, if you've ever worn any long-handled underwear, that's all you want to hear too, isn't it? Let me tell you how I got in the business of selling the sizzle. It was a long time ago at Grandpa's farm. And every Sunday I used to put an apple box out in front of the farm, and I had a sign on it in 13 fancy colors that said, "Eggs, 20 cents. And I did a fair business. But one day the wind destroyed my sign. I built myself a crude, homemade one. But being just a young fellow, I couldn't spell very well. So I had the S on backwards and the cent mark in the wrong spot. And that was the day my business doubled. Because all the city folks driving by on Sunday would look at my crude homemade sign and they say to themselves, just a dumb country fellow, he won't have fancy city prices. So they used to pull up in front of my apple box. And just like a typical woman, she'd nudge her husband halfway out of the car and say, "Go on out and get me a dozen eggs." The poor fellow would come grunting out in front of the machine, and then she'd stick her head out the window and she'd holler, "Ask the boy, are they fresh?" Well, now I could have been ordinary. I could have told the lady, of course they're fresh, one-day-old eggs. But I knew that was the selling sizzle being used in the fancy city grocery stores for the past 20 years. So just to be a little bit different, whenever the women asked me were they fresh, I used to look them right smack in the eye and say, "Madam, do you mind waiting a moment till I get them fresh from the hen house?" Well, of course she didn't bother. So I went into the hen house, and here was my big sizzle. Just before I came out of the hen house, I kicked a little hen over, just enough to make her cackle. I always knew the hen would be there every Sunday, because every Saturday night I roped her into position. So just as I nudged the hen and she started to cackle, out I came holding the eggs in my right hand. Well, after hearing all that cackling going on behind me, did I have to tell those city folks how old those eggs were? Why, some of those poor women actually thought I went in, swept the hens off the nest, squeezed them, and had 1-second-old eggs. Recently, I made a trip around the world. I wanted to study the art of bickering, bartering, beggaring, and bannering in all the bazaars, the flea markets, the thieves' markets. I wanted to talk to businessmen selling automobiles, selling real estate, selling insurance. I wanted to talk to retailers. I wanted to see how things were sold around the world, to see if I couldn't find some hidden, secret, or mysterious methods that made people buy in places like Tokyo, Turkey, in places like Cairo, in Rome, in London, in Paris, even in Tangiers. And when I came back after 90 days, I still found that our 5 points, plus our new 6 Wheeler Point, still apply to selling. So I'd like to give you now the 5 points, plus the 6th one, to help you get a job, a promotion, a sweetheart, or a sales order, to help you get more happiness in the home, more social success, or greater business gains. Because these points will do that for you. And it makes no difference who you are. In real estate, insurance, selling an intangible, selling a tangible. No matter what you are in life, these 5 points will help you become a better salesman and will help you build a surefire sales talk that sells. And here are the 5 points. Point number 1, don't sell the steak, sell the sizzle. It's the sizzle that sells the steak and not the cow, although the cow is, of course, mighty important. But you never saw a steer walking through a restaurant taking orders for a shank bone, did you? But what happens when a waiter walks through with a steak that sizzles? First you hear the sizzle, then you see the sizzle, then you smell the sizzle. And that sizzle then dealt a triple blow to your emotions. And it was 3 to 1 that if you had the money, you'd buy yourself a $5 steak that was sizzling instead of a 30-cent salad that lay in a platter fizzling. Now, hidden in every piece of merchandise, hidden in every product, hidden in every service that sold the world, from waxing floors to life underwriting to real estate to selling automobiles, is a sizzle. I don't know what your sizzles are, and I don't need to know. In the next couple of minutes, to make you so gol darn sizzle conscious that you're going to put on an imaginary pair of sizzle specs now, and you're going to look at what you're selling through the eyes of a sales sizzler. And you're going to see something in what you're selling that you've never seen before. Like going to the planetarium. On the way out, you tell the doorman, "Where did all those stars come from I just looked at?" He laughs at you. He says, "Why, they've been there for centuries. You just didn't have anything to see them with, like the telescope." And so are the sizzles. They've been there for centuries. You just never had the means to see them. So I'm now going to make you sizzle conscious. Let me give you some examples of sizzles. You might say, "Well, they don't apply to me." But after all, he said they wouldn't apply to me. I have to find my own sizzles. The sizzle that makes people buy is the tang in the cheese, the crunch in the cracker, the whiff in the coffee, and the pucker in the pickle. That's what people buy and nothing else. A woman doesn't buy a pickle because it's blue, purple, green, or lavender. She buys it because the pucker she's going to get when she bites into it. The sizzle is the picture in the television set and not the story of the transistors. It's the bubbles in champagne, the foam on beer, the tingling of ice cubes, and a tall glass of lemonade. That's what the sizzle is. The sizzle is something that moves the hearts of people. The steak is something that moves the brain. The reason why the sizzle sells so fast is that the heart is closer to the pocketbook than the brain. So now put on a pair of sizzle specs and start looking at what you're selling through the eyes of a sales sizzler. But remember one thing, before you can sell anything to anybody, you have to sell yourselves first. Because if people don't like you, I don't care how good the sizzle is. If they don't like you to start with, brother, they don't like anything that you're showing them. So you've got to find that sizzle in your own lives. That's something people like and admire about you personally. Maybe it's the way you gleam when they come in. Maybe it's your smile. Maybe it's because you pronounce their name or pronounce their name correctly. That's your sizzle. People beat past your door to get your sizzle because it's as much yours as your thumbprint. When you walk out of your place of business, you and that thumbprint and that sizzle all walk out together. But watch out of what you think is your great big sizzle. Behind your back, everybody knows is your great big fizzle. And you can guard against this by having what I call you-ability. You-ability is your ability to think you and not I. It's your ability to say the word you and never the word I. The biggest word in the world today is the word my. My home, my car, my trip to California. I don't care about your trip to California, but brother, come on over to the house and let me tell you what happened to me out there. It'll only take 3 hours. Who do you look for first at that picture they take at a sales banquet and then pass it around? The minute you get it, you start looking for yourself. Say, "Hey, look at me here, look at me here." And then you nudge your wife and say, "Look at you, why don't you smile once in a while?" But you looked for yourself first, didn't you? So whenever you're talking to anybody, never pull out pictures of your family album and make them look at it. You look at pictures of their family album. Don't you tell everybody you meet all day long what your little Wilbur said for breakfast this morning was so cute. Let them tell you what their little Archibald said it was so gol darn funny. Be a good listener first and a good talker second. Now put on some sizzle specs. Look for these hard appeals in what you're selling. Write them on a piece of paper. But remember, written on a piece of paper or memorized in your brain, these sizzles won't work. Like bullets in a gun, the sizzles are no good until they're fired and hit the hearts of people and hit the hearts of the customers and the prospects.